Hello, everybody. My name is Dr. Edel Hyland. I'm a lecturer of biochemistry here at Queen's University Belfast, and I'd like to spend some time telling you about the pathway that we have here in biology related to biochemistry. So, in preparing for this, I tried to think of what you would like to know. What information would be useful to you in making a decision on what university to come to. And so I've structured my talk here. I want to tell you exactly what biochemistry is and what types of questions biochemistry can answer. If you study biochemistry, what will the tool set be that you'll be able to use in order to understand science? I want to introduce us here at Queen's, what we do and who your classmates might be if you decide to come here. I'll give you a brief outline of the biochemistry pathway and what modules you'll study when you come. And most importantly, what this degree could lead to, not only in terms of biochemistry or science, but what also are your transferable skills. So there are a lot of things you learn within the biochemistry pathway that you can use for other types of jobs after you graduate. And lastly, I'll finish up on the pathway entry requirements. I want to say also that all of this information I'm presenting to you today is also available on the QUB website. Okay, so what is biochemistry? As the name suggests, it's the combination of biology and chemistry, or it's the chemistry and molecular details of life. If we think of this red sphere here of biology, biochemistry is a large portion of what we do in biology. It's based in biology and answers the molecular questions related to biological organisms. It is a very solid foundation to understanding life at the molecular level. Understanding biochemistry principles will give you a huge insight into how biology works and how life has evolved. It also relies on the principles of chemistry, but for those of you who haven't done chemistry in the past or a little bit scared by this, maybe you should know that it only relies on a very small subset of chemistry subdisciplines. But if you're like me and you really enjoyed your chemistry in your A levels, you'll be happy to know that some of the things that you learned in chemistry in school can be used in the biochemistry pathway. Here is a periodic table, which you're probably familiar with if you've done science at all in post-primary. There are a total number of 118 elements in the periodic table. Life or biology relies primarily only on 10 of these. So the subdisciplines of biochemistry that we're going to focus on in the biochemistry pathway only really focuses on organic molecules. So organic chemistry, and there's a little bit of inorganic. So don't be put off by the chemistry here, but do be aware that if you enjoy chemistry, you will be doing some kind of chemistry. And this is the traditional view of biochemistry. So if you were to study biochemistry about 50 years ago at university, you'd be coming in and looking at these really complicated metabolic pathways, all these intricate ways in which the human metabolism works. Thankfully, we don't do that anymore, and modern biochemistry textbooks refrain from putting in these very complicated metabolic pathways. The modern view of biochemistry can be divided into these 6 topics that I've identified. So we're looking at the structure of important molecules within the cell. And it's a very important part of biochemistry, and there are people here at Queen's that look at the structures of proteins. We want to ask how molecules work together inside the cell. The cell is a very crowded environment with all these different molecules. How do they work together to undertake their function? Very importantly, we look at the lack of function of molecules in human diseases. So many of us here at QUB who are biochemists focus on human diseases and look at how these proteins or how these molecules go awry to give various diseases. We work a lot closely with the microbiologists here to ask why pathogens cause disease. By doing biochemistry, you'll know the function and the manipulation of DNA, so example in cloning or in new technologies such as CRISPR, which you may have heard about in the news. And lastly, by understanding biochemistry, we also can think about how life has evolved. So this is the modern view of biochemistry and encompasses many more aspects of biochemistry, not just metabolism, which you might consider is what you know as to be biochemistry. Why should we study biochemistry? It has numerous impacts on us. So biochemistry is obviously useful for human health. So let's take, for example, the recent COVID-19 pandemic. How has biochemistry helped us in this? So biochemistry can use to help us understand the structure of the virus and the important molecules that the virus inside the virus that interact with the human cells. And in doing so, biochemistry can help us identify effective drug targets that can be used to interfere with how COVID-19 interacts with the human body. So treatment options, for example. But most importantly, biochemical principles and techniques are crucial in the diagnostic kits we use to identify people infected with the virus. So you can see how much this recent COVID pandemic relied on biochemists and will continue to do so as we try to fight this pandemic. Biochemistry is useful for society. It generates new biotechnology, so new employment. And up in Northern Ireland, the most prominent science technologies are based in biology and biochemistry. And biochemistry impacts agricultural practices, and in doing so, addresses global food security. And biochemistry sheds light on basic science. So, for example, the increased understanding of how organisms evolved or molecular adaptation, which is something that my lab focuses on, is all based in biochemistry. But for the most part, most biological disciplines rely on molecular methods that use biochemistry. So what you learn as a biochemistry is highly transferable to other scientific disciplines. What kind of questions has biochemistry answered in the past? So who are the most famous biochemists, you might ask? So biochemists have answered the question, what is the chemical basis of inheritance through the identification and the structure of the DNA molecule, which was given the Nobel Prize back in 1953. You should recognize some of these faces here, probably. There's Watson, Crick, Wilkins, and Rosalind Franklin. Biochemists have also answered the question, how does a cell produce energy, in which Hans Krebs was given the Nobel Prize in 1937. Or what was the composition or structure of proteins, or those very important molecules in our cells that undertake all the biological processes. They were given, so Fred Sanger and Dorothy Hodgkin were both given a Nobel Prize to answer this question. Present day biochemistry, they're pretty old awards now, but in the last 10, 15 years, there are multiple biochemists that have gotten the Nobel Prize, and they've answered questions such as, why do cells make extra non-coding RNA? This is a molecule in our cells that we thought was just junk, had no real function. But in 2007, the Nobel Prize was awarded to Andy Fire and Craig Mello for their discovery of this thing called RNA interference, which is a very important tool that we use in biochemistry labs now. In 2009, these three individuals were awarded the Nobel Prize by answering the question how chromosomes end up protected. They discovered an enzyme called telomerase, which is important in cancer. And most recently, in 2018, the biochemist Dr. Frances Arnold over in UCLA was given the Nobel Prize by her discovery of how proteins evolve. But let me say the most interesting question is, what will you discover? And here at Queen's are definitely examples of undergraduates who have contributed to the scientific literature and have made discoveries within their undergraduate degree that have led to publications. I had a girl in my lab only last year for this to happen. So really, there's a lots of opportunity here to get involved in scientific discovery as well as understanding a lot about biochemistry. Okay, so who we are. Here are the biochemists within the school. If you come to the QUB School of Biological Sciences, there are over 60 academics by who will be teaching you and who you have the opportunity to work with during your degree. Here are the 8 biochemists, and most of us here are involved in looking at the molecular details of human disease. So for example, I'm interested in the structure and function of DNA and how it relates to antifungal resistance mechanisms. My colleague, Dr. Chris Law, is understanding the structure of drug efflux pumps and their involvement in antimicrobial resistance. We have numerous people working on cancer mechanisms, as well as the microbiome and epigenetics. And these research topics will become an intricate part of your teaching here at Queen's, and you can be assured that you'll get the first, most up-to-date knowledge in the fields that we do our research in. I might also say at this point that we are now housed in a brand new state-of-the-art facility here at School of Biological Sciences. So we have all the resources you need in order to undertake really exciting, breaking edge science. Who might your classmates be if you come to the biochemistry pathway? So every year we take in about 30 students into this pathway. Majority of those are from the Northern Ireland, but there's a good representation of students from the Republic of Ireland and mainland UK. For some reason, typically more females than males choose the biochemistry pathway. And so, for example, in 2018 and 19, our class was made up of 61% females. So now I'd just like to take you through some of the degree, the modules that are part of your degree program, which you will be studying if you come here. So we have numerous options in our degree pathway, and the basic option is a 3-year degree, stage 1, 2, and 3, but we also have a 4- and 5-year option. So if you take the basic 3-year degree in stage 1, you'll be studying chemistry, because you need a sound chemical background in biological relevant molecules. So there'll be 2 modules, fundamentals in chemistry, as well as structure, reactivity, mechanisms in organic and bioorganic chemistry. These modules are taken over in the chemistry department and taught by chemists, and are the only exclusively available to the biochemistry students. So if you take any other science pathway here at Queen's, you won't be able to take these chemistry modules. Stage 1 also has good foundation in biology, of course, and these 2 modules here are taken by the majority of the first-year students in biological science. So the first one is the molecular basis of life. It's a year-long module, and it emphasizes the structure and function of molecules such as proteins, lipids, carbohydrates, and nucleic acids. The second module is the world of microorganisms, which provides a thorough grounding in the diversity of microorganisms, their structure, nutrition, growth physiology, and genetics. Both of these modules have a huge emphasis on experimental and hands-on practical experience. So every week you will be in the lab learning new skills that can be taken to study how we study biology and how we make discoveries. In stage 2, you will have a year-long module on cell biology, as well as a module on molecular biology and bioinformatics. Bioinformatics is a very important discipline right now within biology, which relies on computational approaches to understanding biochemistry. You'll have a half-year module in experimental biochemistry, which is a module that I teach, and you'll have a lot of practical work involved in this module, and you'll learn the current technologies and analytics used to answer biochemical questions, and you'll further your training in microorganisms by taking this module, microorganisms in action. At stage 3, this is where you join labs. So you have a full 24-week independent project in one of the participating labs in our school. You don't have to join the 8 biochemistry labs, but you will give them priority within those labs. Here you do hands-on work with your own independent research, your own project. You have to answer your own questions. It's totally, whatever you discover is novel, it's new, it's your opportunity to contribute to scientific literature. You will also take a year-long module on biomolecules and health and disease, and you can tailor your degree in the final year by choosing from a range of half-year modules. Here I've listed some of them here, and there are other ones also which you should find on the biochemistry and the QUB website. As I said, we also have a 4-year or 5-year options. So in a 4-year degree, this is the BSc Honours in Biochemistry with Professional Study. This is where you take a year out. You do the first 2 years of college, you take a year out after that, and you do a 46-week structured placement in either biotechnology, a pharmaceutical, or an academic lab. Now, these are very structured, in meaning that there are coursework assigned throughout the year, and you maintain communication between us here at Queen's as well as your placement provider. Many of the students who go on placement in their 3rd year end up being employed by that placement after they graduate. So it's a very beneficial year to understand hands-on experience what goes on outside in the real world in a science lab. And this is, so if you would like to avail of that, please apply for the degree option with professional studies. We also have an MSci option. This is if you wanted to do an extra year after your final year. So if you do it with professional studies, it's a 5-year degree. If you do it without professional studies, it's a 4-year degree. And this is where you work 100% of your time inside a lab in Queen's, either in biological science or in other research institutes or even at the hospital labs. And it gives you the degree accreditation of MSci. This is a very popular option with biochemists. It turns out many of the biochemistry students go on and do the MSci degree. At this point, I'd like to point out that all biological science degrees are accredited by the Royal Society of Biology. This is a highly recognized, rigorous seal of approval that is internationally recognized. And so not just biochemistry, but any degree pathway here in biological science is accredited. So what are your learning outcomes? Obviously, you're going to have a lot of scientific knowledge and understanding. You should be very familiar with certain textbooks by the time you finish your studies here in Queen's. You will have cognitive skills, right? You'll be able to quantitative analysis, interpretation of experimental data. You'll be able to have problem solving skills based on numerical and verbal data or a mixture of two. You'll be able to demonstrate critical reasoning, and you'll be proficient in use of IT for data management and presentation. Some of the subject specific or biochemistry specific skills, you'll comprehend the scientific literature related to biochemistry and integrated information from them. You will carry out routine investigative work in a biochemistry lab. You'll be able to comply with health and safety regulations, and you'll be able to interrogate and evaluate bibliography and bioinformatic databases. These are all skills that are more specific to the molecular biochemistry pathway. So you'll also get some transferable skills you take away from this course that you can apply to any employment setting. First one of them is to demonstrate good oral communication and presentation skills. There are numerous opportunities within your degree pathway whereby you will be communicating, presenting your research or some aspect of the literature to your peers and to us academics. You will also learn how to coherently and accurately write scientifically. In your final year, again, you will have the opportunity to write a lit review, which is a 3,000-word essay on a research topic of interest, as well as your undergraduate thesis, which is a 4,000-word document. During your course, you'll definitely be able to improve your time management. When you come to college, you'll realize that there are lots of different deadlines, lots of different aspects of your course, from working in the lab to filling out, attending lectures, to doing coursework. And during your time here, you will definitely learn better time management skills and planning around your time. And you'll demonstrate a capacity to learn through independent study. So especially as you progress through your degree in the later stages, there is less face-to-face teaching with academics and more self-directed learning. And so you'll get a very good insight into how to do independent study. Employment opportunities. Probably one of the most important slides here on this talk. So what job can you get from this degree? Well, I'm an academic, so I'm going to first promote the academic choice. So you can go on and do further studies. You can do the MSci I spoke about, or you can go on and do a PhD program and become an academic in a university like I am. Or you can become a lab technician. You can work in biotechnology industries. As I said, there are many in Northern Ireland, such as Randox, AFBI, and there's some in the food science industry. You can become a lab technician in pharmaceutical industries and drug discovery, and there's lots of those within the island of Ireland as well as in England. Very big pharma companies that you'd be totally employed to take part in. And a lot of these big pharmaceutical companies have postgraduate training for you to go in before you get a job. You can become a clinical biochemist, which is basically a lab technician at hospital or diagnostic purposes. So you can be communicating with the doctors in the hospital setting and trying to diagnose or trying to treat diseases. You can become a data analyst, because data analytics is a very important part of biochemistry, which can be, so data analyst is important in a wide variety of sectors. You can go on and do your PGC in science teaching. But again, I think the critical thinking and time management and skills that you're going to learn can be useful for going on into other alternative options that don't seem related, but that the skills that you learn within this pathway can make you attractive to industries such as accountancy or patent law or business consulting. And there are definitely examples of graduates from our program that have gone into these sectors. What do you need to get into this pathway? So this is all part, you can find all this information on the QUB website. But to become a biochemist, you need to have a BBB, including chemistry and biology, and a GCSE Maths grade C, or an ABB, including chemistry, and at least one from maths or physics, GCSE biology grade C, or GCSE double award science grade CC, as well as GCSE Maths grade C. So with that, that's all I have for you today. I'd like to thank you for your time, and I would encourage you to email me. Again, my name is Dr. Riedel Hyland. You'll find my contact details on the QUB website. If you have any questions related to the biochemistry pathway, I'm here to answer them. Thank you.